The call came in on a Tuesday, just after lunch while I was scraping frost off the back steps. Not unusual for March in Edmonton. The kind of cold that doesn't announce itself, just settles into the joints and stays there. My son-in-law's number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I answered. His voice was flat in a way that took me a second to place. Not angry. Practiced. "We need you out of the suite by the end of the month," he said. "We've decided to list the house. You understand?" I didn't say anything right away. I stood on the back steps with the scraper still in my hand and watched my breath disappear into the February air. End of the month was 18 days away. "Is your wife aware of this call?" I asked. A pause. Short. "We talked about it together." "Put her on," I said. "She's not available right now." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. I'd been nodding at things that didn't deserve agreement my whole life. Old habit. "I'll need it in writing," I said. "Whatever you decide." He exhaled. "It doesn't have to be complicated." "No," I said. "It doesn't." I hung up and went back inside. The suite had been mine for 4 years, a basement renovation my daughter had suggested after my wife passed. Proper entrance, separate kitchen, decent windows at ground level that let in light in the mornings. My son-in-law had called it a good investment when we'd talked about the arrangement. He wasn't wrong. I paid below market rent every month, directly into their account, and I kept the space the way I'd kept every space I'd lived in since I was 23. Clean, quiet, no trouble. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and looked at the room. 4 years of mornings. My grandson's drawings still taped to the side of the fridge where he'd stuck them last Christmas. He was 7. He called me Grandpa Vince. I didn't call my daughter back that afternoon. I waited. She called at 6:47. I know because I'd been watching the clock the way you do when you're waiting for something to confirm what you already suspect. Dad. Her voice was careful, not warm. Managed. "Your husband called me today," I said. "I know. I'm sorry about how he said it, but we have been talking about this for a while." "How long?" A pause long enough to answer the question without words. "The house has gone up significantly," she said. "There's a window right now. The market." "I know what the market is," I said. "I owned a home in this city for 31 years. She went quiet. "Then this isn't about you." I let that sit between us for a moment. 18 days, I said. "In March. We can help you find something. There are places. I don't need you to find me something." I kept my voice even. The same voice I'd used when she was 16 and pushed every boundary she could find. Even then, I never raised it. "I need to understand what's happening." "We're selling the house, Dad, and the suite, it goes with the house. Obviously." I said goodnight and ended the call. I sat for a while longer. The suite had a small gas fireplace I'd never much used. I turned it on that evening, not because I was cold, because I needed something to look at that wasn't a wall. I was 63 years old, retired 2 years earlier from 38 years in municipal infrastructure. My wife had been gone since the fall before I moved in here. I hadn't been a burden. I hadn't been a problem. I paid my rent on time. I shoveled the front walk without being asked. And I watched my grandson on Wednesday afternoons so my daughter could work from the office without interruption. None of that had changed. What had changed, I would come to understand, was the number on a real estate website. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from panic, from precision. My mind organizing things the way it always has when something needs managing. I've spent 4 decades coordinating systems that can't afford to fail. You learn to think in sequence, not emotion. By morning, I had a short list. First, I called my younger brother. He lives in Kelowna. We've never been close the way some brothers are. but he's steady and he doesn't exaggerate. I told him what happened without editorializing. He listened. He said, "What do you need?" I said I wasn't sure yet, but that I might need a place to land for a few weeks if things moved quickly. He said fine, that was enough. Second, I found the original agreement. I'd had a lawyer draft it when we set up the suite. My daughter hadn't wanted to. She'd said it felt cold, formalizing family. I'd said it protected everyone, including her. She'd signed it eventually. I read it twice, slowly, the way you read something when you're looking for what isn't there as much as what is. There was a 90-day notice clause, not 18 days, 90. I photographed every page and sent them to a friend who practiced real estate law before he retired. He called me back in under an hour. "This is a residential tenancy agreement," he said. "Registered, signed, witnessed. The 90-day clause is enforceable. She can't just list the suite with 18 days' notice." "She doesn't know that," I said. "Then she's going to find out." I thanked him, and he gave me a name. Someone still practicing, someone who could formalize the representation if it came to that. I didn't call the lawyer yet. I wanted to see what the next move looked like first. It came faster than I expected. That Friday, my daughter called to tell me a realtor would be coming through the following Tuesday for a walkthrough assessment. She said it in the way people say things they hope you won't question. Quick, framed as logistics. "You'll want to have things tidy," she said. "I always have things tidy," I said. "Right, of course." A small pause. "This is just how things are going, Dad. It's not personal." "You've said that," I said. Tuesday came. I was home. I didn't hide. I answered the door when the realtor knocked, a young woman with a measuring tape clipped to her bag and a smile that hadn't been tested by much yet. I introduced myself as the tenant. I watched her expression recalibrate. "I wasn't told there was a tenant," she said. "There is," I said. 63, retired, good credit, 4 years of on-time rent. "You'll want to note that." She took her measurements. She was professional about it. On her way out, she paused at the door. "Will you be vacating before the listing?" she asked. "That depends on the notice period," I said, "which is 90 days, in writing." Her pen stopped moving. She nodded once. I closed the door. That afternoon my son-in-law called. Not my daughter. Him. "What did you say to the realtor?" "The truth," I said, "that I'm a tenant with a signed agreement. You're making this difficult. I'm following the terms we both signed. You're her father." His voice climbed slightly, the way it does when he's searching for leverage he doesn't have. "This is family. Family is why I had a lawyer draft that agreement," I said. "So we'd never have to argue about what was agreed." Silence. Then, "We could help you with first and last somewhere else. Make it easier." "I appreciate that," I said. "I'll let you know if I need it." He hung up. I made dinner. Pasta, simple, the kind my wife used to call Bachelor Tuesday food, even when we'd been married 29 years. I ate at the table with the evening news on low. Outside, the street lights caught the last of the snow. It took 4 more days for things to escalate. My daughter came down on a Saturday morning without knocking, which she hadn't done in 3 years. She stood in the middle of the kitchen with her coat still on, which told me she hadn't planned to stay. "I need you to be reasonable," she said. I poured her coffee anyway and set it on the counter. Old habit. "Define reasonable," I said. "Don't make this a legal thing." "It became a legal thing when you gave me 18 days, I said. "I didn't draft that agreement to be difficult. I drafted it so neither of us would end up in this conversation." She wrapped both hands around the mug. For a moment, she looked exactly like she had at 12, trying to find the argument she hadn't thought of yet. "We have a buyer interested," she said. "A cash offer. They want to close by May 1st. "That's 7 weeks," I said. "Yes, My notice period is 90 days from a written notice I have not yet received. She set the mug down. You're really going to do this? I'm going to follow the agreement we signed. Even if it costs us the sale? I looked at her for a long moment. She was 41 years old. She had a good job, a husband with a good income, a beautiful son who left drawings on my fridge. And somewhere between ambition and urgency, she had stopped seeing the man standing in her kitchen as her father and started seeing him as a line item. I wasn't angry, but I was clear. I'm not costing you anything, I said. I'm holding a position I was legally given. If the buyer can't wait, that's a negotiation between you and the buyer. She left without finishing her coffee. I called the lawyer on Monday. Her name was Adrienne Bouchard. She'd been practicing residential tenancy law in Edmonton for 22 years. She had an office on 124th Street with 2 potted ferns that had clearly survived longer than most things brought into law offices. She shook my hand once, firm, and sat across from me without preamble. Walk me through it from the beginning, she said. I did, calmly, in order. The call, the 18 days, the agreement, the realtor, the cash buyer, the Saturday conversation. She made notes. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she looked at the photographs of the agreement I'd printed. The 90-day clause is valid, she said. Fully enforceable under Alberta's Residential Tenancies Act. The listing doesn't affect your right to occupy. Can they show the suite while I'm still in it? With 24 hours written notice, yes. But they cannot misrepresent your tenancy status to a buyer. If they do, that becomes a separate issue. They told the realtor there was no tenant, I said. She made another note. Didn't look up. That's useful. I asked her what the likely shape of this was. She leaned back. If they proceed with the listing and accept an offer contingent on vacant possession, the burden is on them to deliver vacant possession. That means either buying you out of your tenancy or waiting out the 90 days. The buyer's timeline is their problem, not yours. And if they try to pressure me to leave early, then they hear from me instead of you. She drafted a formal letter that afternoon. It confirmed my tenancy, referenced the agreement, outlined the 90-day requirement, and noted the misrepresentation to the realtor. It was sent to my daughter's address by registered mail and copied to their real estate agent. I went home and waited. The reply came through my daughter's lawyer 3 days later. A different tone entirely. Where there had been pressure, now there was distance. Formal language about reviewing the agreement and seeking resolution. That's what it sounds like when someone realizes the ground has shifted. My grandson came down that Wednesday afternoon as usual while my daughter worked from upstairs. He didn't know anything was happening. He brought his collection of small plastic dinosaurs and arranged them on my kitchen floor in a configuration that apparently meant something important, though the logic was his own. I sat on the floor with him and didn't think about anything else for 2 hours. That was the hardest part of all of it. Not the legal back and forth. Not the tension with my daughter. The understanding that whatever happened next, Wednesday afternoons might change. My daughter came down to collect him at 5. She stood at the door with her hand on his shoulder and looked at me the way she hadn't in a while. Not managed. Not careful. Just tired. I didn't think you'd fight back, she said quietly, so he couldn't hear. I'm not fighting, I said. I'm standing still. She nodded. She didn't have a response to that. She took her son upstairs and I heard them through the ceiling, his voice high and busy, her soft and familiar in a way that reminded me of when she was small. Things moved slowly after that. The cash buyer's realtor contacted Adrienne to ask about the tenancy situation. Adrienne explained it plainly. The buyer, as it turned out, wasn't interested in waiting out a 90-day clause. He'd seen 3 other properties that week. He withdrew. My son-in-law texted me at 9:14 that evening. You cost us $150,000. That's what he said, like a number makes a fact. I didn't respond right away. I poured a glass of water, stood at the kitchen window, watched the alley light flicker the way it had for 4 winters. Then I typed one sentence. I told you the terms. You chose not to follow them. He didn't reply. I didn't sleep particularly well that night either, but not for the same reasons as before. That night it was something quieter. The weight of knowing that a relationship you'd built carefully over 15 years had been tested and found to have a different structure underneath than you'd believed. My daughter called the next morning, early, before 7. He's upset, she said. I know, I said. He thinks you planned this. I had a legal agreement, I said. That's not a plan. That's a document. Silence. Then I should have given you proper notice. I let that sit. Yes, I said. You should have. She exhaled. The kind of exhale that carries more than air. Is there a way to resolve this? She asked. All of it. There's always a way, I said. It just needs to start with the right conversation. We met 2 days later, without lawyers, my daughter and I at the kitchen table in the suite with coffee between us and the gas fireplace on, because the air in the room needed something to soften it. She said she'd been afraid I'd fight the sale indefinitely out of spite. I told her I'd never had any interest in spite, that I'd lived in this suite because it made sense and because being near my grandson mattered to me, not because I was owed a place to stay. She said she understood that now, in a way she hadn't a month ago. I believed her. We talked through what a proper arrangement looked like, a real 90-day notice, formally served, giving me until late June, time to find something appropriate. Not charity, not a favor. A right. I told her about Kelowna. She asked if I was thinking of leaving Edmonton. I said I wasn't sure, that my brother had space and the winters were easier there, and that maybe 63 was a reasonable age to stop defending a situation that had already changed. She was quiet for a long time. I don't want you to go, she said finally. I know, I said. He wasn't wrong about the money, she said, but he was wrong about how he went about it. He knows that, I said. She looked at me. Did he tell you? Not in words. She almost smiled. You always do that. You read the thing that isn't said. 38 years of infrastructure, I said. You learn to look at what's holding things up, not just what's in the way. The formal notice arrived the following week, June 15th, signed properly this time, witnessed. I pinned it to the corkboard above my desk next to my grandson's most recent drawing, which was of what he described as a rocket moose. He'd signed it in the bottom corner in careful block letters, the way I'd shown him. I started looking at apartments, not urgently, but with intention. There were decent options in the river valley, close enough that Wednesday afternoons could continue if everyone chose for them to. I found one on the 6th floor with east-facing windows and a balcony that wouldn't be useful for much but looking. My son-in-law came down one evening in late April, knocked, which he hadn't done in years. I opened the door. He stood with his hands in his jacket pockets, the way men stand when they're trying to figure out how to begin. I moved too fast, he said. You did, I said. She told me about the agreement before we called you. I thought you wouldn't enforce it. I wouldn't have had to, I said, if someone had asked instead of told. He nodded. He didn't ask to come in, and I didn't offer. Some conversations are better finished where they start, on doorsteps in the cold where there's no chance of comfortable distraction. I'll be out by June, I said. We don't need to make it harder than it is. He put his hand out. I shook it. He went back upstairs. I closed the door and stood in the quiet for a moment. The fridge hummed. Somewhere above me I heard my grandson running between rooms, the particular thunder of a 7-year-old with somewhere to be. I had handled this without shouting, without threats, without the kind of damage that doesn't heal. I had followed the terms of an agreement two people had both signed when they trusted each other, and I had held that line when the trust got complicated. That's what the agreement had been for. Not to win, to protect the ability to keep going afterward. The apartment on the 6th floor had a move-in date of June 1st. I paid the deposit myself with money I'd been putting aside for 12 years in an account my wife had named the quiet account. She'd said you never know when you'll need to simply leave somewhere gracefully. She'd been right, as she usually was. I gave my daughter a key to the new place before I moved in. Not because she asked, because some things you do to say that the door is still open, even if the address has changed. My grandson helped me carry boxes on the last Saturday in May. He was very serious about it. He carried the same small box 4 times, back and forth between the car and the elevator, declaring each trip essential. I let him. On the last trip, he took my hand in the elevator without saying anything, just held it while the floors counted upward. I kept my eyes on the numbers and felt something settle in my chest that I hadn't had words for in a long while. Not triumph, not relief. Something older and quieter than either of those. The elevator opened. He let go of my hand and ran for the door at the end of the hall. I walked. Some distances you take at your own pace.